Just wanted to make a quick update here about your instrument. So it's a good improvement on the piano today. There were some areas that were pretty out of tune. In particular, and I'll send you a still photo of this area later. I'll try to show you with the camera while making the movie, but I'll be kind of flying blind because I'm using the front camera. In any case, by far the biggest issue for your piano was the new wire that was put on. So sometime in the relatively recent past of the instrument, wire broke and it was restrung successfully. However, new wire is extremely elastic. That was the D note and the C sharp that you were hearing. The new wire is extremely elastic, so it takes a long time of stretching and restretching and retching and stretching and in order for it to actually hold pitch. So those two notes had to be negotiated 4 or 5 times each, and I'm sure they had been tuned multiple times before when the wire was restrung. So I think the previous technician just didn't realize how many times you have to bring it up to tension, and it can be a little nerve-wracking if you're not used to how elastic new wire is. You keep worrying you're going to break it because you just how many more times can you keep stretching it? But it is very normal. So that's corrected and hopefully stabilized. There were a number of mutes stuck in the instrument behind the front door. The front door is the piece of wood in front of your knees when you're playing. So I removed the front door to inspect the instrument, and there were a couple of spots, the D and the C sharp being one of them, where some felt was stuck between strings to try to mute the offending noise. So in the instance of the out of tune new wire, it was just trying to eliminate that sound, but there was still bleed through, which is what you were hearing, that real dissonant, tritone flat contributing factor to those notes. And then also the A flat in the same range above middle C had a buzzing bridge pin, which I was able to tap around in order to silence that. That may or may not come back. And there's cabinet noise on the instrument, the latching mechanism on the bass side that holds the lid down buzzes pretty prominently with some notes in the high end, but it shouldn't when the case is all together. There are a number of hammers that are misaimed. In the high end, there's 3 wires for each note, and in the high end, there's a couple of hammers that only strike 2 of the wires. In the low end, there's bichords that are diagonal, and there's a couple instances where the hammer actually hits the neighboring wire or ghosts it. So there's some hammer aiming to do. In some cases, that hammer aiming is causing sticking keys, so the hammer has this friction with its neighbor on its way to or from striking, and so that we may wish to address. A lot of this just depends on how often you're playing it and the level of musicianship. The piano is a spinet, and so it has twice as many moving parts as an ordinary upright. Video killed the radio star. Radio killed the piano bar. There used to be a piano, an 800-pound 5.5 foot tall piano in every bar in every restaurant. It was the form of live entertainment. And then with the advent of the radio, mass media displaced piano as the form of live entertainment. And the spinet was conceived of. They weren't constructed at the same time. The Depression happened, but essentially they've had to, in order for pianos to continue to be manufactured, let's do half the wood, half the metal, half the serviceability. And so the spinet was born. An upright piano, essentially the mechanism of the piano is a seesaw with a catapult on the end, and you're shooting the hammer at the string and catching and reloading it. You have to be out of the way of the string or it has no room to ring. A spinet is the same general idea. There's a miniaturized catapult, but instead of the whippin, or the catapult, sitting on the other end of the key, it's actually suspended below. So again, so you can fit into the shorter cabinet. So there's all these extra abstracts and elbows in order to suspend from the back of the key, in order to suspend the touch response mechanism. And so those pieces, the abstracts and the elbows, can be in the way of negotiating what would already be kind of a blind shot at getting a screw to re-aim. It's not impossible, but it is a little harder to do and less predictable. On an upright, if you had a hammer that was rubbing against its neighbor, causing a sluggish key, you could probably spend at most 10 minutes on it. On a Spin-It, you might spend 20 minutes and still not succeed. So some of these, we may kind of go after the worst first, the ones that are bothering you the most. And if they're not bothering you, we don't necessarily have to do anything about them. By far, the C#D issue was just hands down the squeakiest wheel. And that just needed some to reach its tensile limit. So we're going to kind of fly blind here on the camera. I did take a still that I'll send you. So I'm hoping we're in the right area here. So you can see these pins here. Let me see if I can get them from above where it'll be most obvious. I don't know if this shot is doing any justice. These two pins are not hammered in as much as the neighboring notes. They're corresponding with one of the new wires. And what's going on there is that when the piano was restrung, when that area was restrung, the pin was backed out a couple turns too many in order to put the new wire in and twist it on. And so we can hammer those pins back in, but we don't want to do it after a tuning because it will destabilize the neighboring pins. So before the next tuning, we're going to hammer those in so that they're level with the neighboring pins. All the pin tension is good throughout. So that's not, it's not even necessary that we do that, but it would certainly give a little more longevity to that area. Basically, the tuning pin is a finely threaded screw. We only see the very end of it. There's 2 more inches of it that we don't see that are driven into the pin block. And most of the grip on a pin is happening at the end. And so when you have a pin that isn't driven as much, you're going to miss out on grip in the long run. So it'd be nice to really have it engaged with the same portion of the pin block as its neighboring notes. All right, I'm going to put the piano back together. Please don't hesitate to call if you have any questions or concerns. Talk to you soon.